All right, so we've got empty file. We're gonna get a post request. We need to do first verify the token, because otherwise anybody can make a post on this blog. So how are we gonna verify the token? Well, it came in through this header. So let's first parse out that header. We're going to take out the word bearer. We're going to use server HTTP authorization. So that's going to be the value of the token that it sent. How do we know if it's valid? Well, we don't yet. We need to ask somebody else if it's valid. We can ask the token endpoint whether it's valid, it turns out. So I can go and I can just send it to the token endpoint. And this is just a bunch of PHP crap. Okay. And then let's just do this for now. So this is just an awkward way to make HTTP requests, but it's built into PHP, so I don't have to install any libraries for it to work. So it's saying we're going to make a request to that URL. We're going to include this header. We're going to return the response body into the variable, and then we're going to run the request. So at this point, we're going to output it. So if I do this now with Quill, we get a different response. We see 200 OK because there is a micropub endpoint, and it returned something from the token endpoint, which was I must have sent something to the wrong URL. Let's go look at the documentation. Here's how to verify access tokens. Oh, I need to send it as a post request. No, get request. Let's add. Oh, that's what it was. This is supposed to be header. Okay, try it again. What am I doing wrong? That's what I'm doing wrong. Okay, there we go. So we've just been looking at the token endpoint response here, right? Token endpoint now says, okay, here is information about the token. Here's the user ID that the token was issued to. And I can see that this is me. This is the URL I was expecting. It's not somebody else. So let's take a look at this. It's JSON, so let's JSON decode it. And then we're going to say if the me in that is not equal to exactly avocado.lol/Berlin, then we're going to say, okay, not allowed. So now we've locked down this endpoint, and it can only be used by tokens that were issued by tokens.indieauth.com that have the correct value in the user ID. At this point, this should look the same. Oh, I did something wrong. I always do too many parentheses around these. Okay. Great. Now we can actually handle a micropub request. So let's do something. Let's say, this is where we're going to make a little blogging engine. We're going to take the content that Quill sends, and we're going to put it into a file and then show whatever is in that file on the main web page. So let's say, so everything is, Quill is sending everything in the form post, right? So everything's in the post variable from PHP. So let's JSON encode that and then put it into a file. And we're going to name the file in that posts folder, and we're going to give it a date. Date is year, month, day, hour, minute, second. .json. Okay. Write that to disk, and then let's see what happens now. Okay. Quill still says something's wrong, but did it make the file? It did make the file. And now here's the post request. Oh, yep, and it set access token in that, so we're going to remove that first. Quill sends the access token twice for backwards compatible reasons. So one last thing that's missing here is we need the microweb endpoint to tell Quill that it worked, that it successfully wrote the post into a file somewhere. The way we do that is we say 201 created. We return an HTTP header 201 saying it worked, and we also tell Quill what the URL for the file is. And that's going to be, we need a permalink for this. So we're going to say Berlin / and then I'm going to go back to just store the date. And we're going to use just the date in the URL. So now the microweb endpoints are turning the right response. Quill saw that it worked, saw that it got the right header back, and now redirected me to that post that was just created, which is kind of like so that you can confirm that your site actually made this post on your site. Of course, we don't handle this URL yet on our little microscopic blocking engine, so that's why we see 404 not found. But note that we did end up on the right URL, which is this /Berlin /that. For the purposes of this demo, I'm going to make my URLs include a query string parameter so that we can actually do this without any server config changes. So let's try this again. Hello from IndieWebCamp Berlin. Post. Great. So now notice that the URL is $ID equals that. And of course, we're back on our index page because we haven't actually done anything with handling that yet. So in here, there should be a couple files with our posts in them. So let's go and turn this into a blogging engine. Here is our little web page, which is great. We're going to add some logic into this now. We're going to say if there is an ID in the query string, we're going to do something different than if there is not an ID. So if there's not an ID, we're going to return our index page. And if there is an ID, we're going to show the post permalink. So how are we going to do that? Well, let's grab the file. And JSON decode it. Okay, hopefully you're like, why are you using untrusted data in a file? Get contents, that's bad. You're right, it's bad. So let's clean it up a little bit. Let's do a lazy version, which is remove anything that is not numbers or a hyphen. That way, the worst that happens is people can access any file in that folder and not outside of that folder. Now let's just say what's there. So we reload this page. Hopefully we get something. We don't. We got the ID. Oh, I forgot .json. Great. Okay, so here's our little post. Let's make this look nicer. So let's say show the content. Escape that. And we can show all the tags on it. And yeah, that's it. So here is our blog post. This looks a little more like an actual blog now, right? A little. At least we can show the permalink. Let's go back to the index page, and now let's do get the list of files. So get all the JSON files out of that folder, and then let's parse that file and do something with the file. So we're going to make our little list of posts now. So we're going to do the same thing with these and put a space between them. Cool. Now we have a blog. It's a fantastic blog. Let's add a link to the permalink as we should. We need just the ID. We're going to skip the permalink for now. It's good enough. Okay. How are we doing? We had to write a little blogging engine in there. That was the hardest part of this. Once we have a blogging engine, we now have a way to use Quill, because Quill can now create posts. So let's go back through that and look at that again. Quill says, here's my blog, here's the micropub endpoint, and here's a token. And if I want to go make a post, it's going to send a post request to the micropub endpoint with content, category, maybe a slug, maybe some other properties. Like if the browser is aware of where it is, it can include geo information. And post that to the blog, and there's the post created on the blog. Follow? Okay. Since we have time, let's go one step further. And let's talk about photos. So that was text posts. Text posts are very easy. All you have to do is handle just the text of the post. But it's also fun to be able to upload photos into a blog. So there's basically two ways photos are handled in micropub. One is the simple way, and one is the better way. The simple way is just like an HTML form. It's going to attach, it's going to just use like a file upload, like what happens with that, which is it gets sent in the post request itself. It's turned into encoded data, sent in the post. And then PHP on the other end is like, cool, I know how to interpret this, and it says it's a file. The other way is what's called a media endpoint, which is to create a special separate thing that handles just files. So we're going to go and create that instead because it's more fun and is better architecture overall and ends up with a better experience using apps. So media endpoint, we need to first tell Quill where the media endpoint is, which is done by the micropub endpoint. So the micropub endpoint actually has to now have two modes, which is if there is a queue in the query string, if the micropub client is querying the micropub endpoint, we're going to do something different than if it's a post request. So here we're going to say, we're going to return a JSON document, which is, I have to go look, actually, at micropub. And it says media endpoint, discovery, it expects this JSON. And we're going to say it's that. Okay, so now if I go and log back into Quill, Quill's going to be like, oh, do you have a media endpoint? And hopefully the answer is yes. And yes, the answer is yes, here it is. So now Quill is like, cool, if the user ever uploads a photo into Quill, I'm going to first, before I do anything, send the photo to this media endpoint and let it deal with it. So media endpoint's going to need this token validation stuff as well. So we're just going to copy it over and deal with deduping that later. And then we need to do something with the photo. So we're going to make a new folder called files. We're going to make that world writable so the web server can write to it. Don't do that for reals. And then we need to handle the file from PHP. So the way PHP files are handled is it's going to show up in there. So and then I think we can do copy temp name to a new file that we make, which is going to be files / file name. And then again, we need to tell Quill that it worked. So we're going to return this same header of it created a file. It's in files / file name. We need to generate a file name. So the file name is going to be, we're going to use the current date again. And we're just going to hard code JPEG onto the end instead of actually properly detecting what kind of file was uploaded. You probably want to actually be like, was this an image? Was it a audio file? But we're just going to do the easy version right now. Okay. I think that works. So I do this and upload an image. Then, oh, look at that. That worked first try. So what Quill did was Quill said, oh, you're uploading a photo. I don't know what post it's for yet, but we're about to do a photo upload. It sent it over to the media endpoint, and just like a micropub request, returned or included the authorization header with the access token. The media endpoint says, here's a file. I don't know what to do with it yet, so I'm just going to store it somewhere. I'm going to put it in that folder and tell you where it is. And it put it in a folder, gave it a name, and told Quill what the name is. At this point, Quill still hasn't made a post. It's just got this file kind of hanging out. So it puts it into the interface. And in the meantime, I can now say, here is a post with a photo. Now when I click post, it doesn't need to upload the file. The file is already uploaded. It just needs to tell the micropub endpoint where the file is. So if we go and look at our newest post, I'm doing this out of order. What is this? 141114. There we go. So here's what the micropub request looks like. The text I wrote, now there's a new property called photo, and it's the URL. So now we want to add photo rendering to our blogging engine. How do you think we're going to do that? We're going to be like, cool. Is there a photo? If there's a photo, let's write an image tag. And we need that in the permalink view as well. And I did something wrong. Who can spot the error? Too many open PHP tags. And there's the photo. Let's add some CSS. And say images are max with 400 pixels. That's better. Cool. So now we have a blog that supports text, posts, and images and tags. Clap, clap, clap. Cool. We still have 10 minutes. Any other questions? What do you want to see next? So hopefully with this, you have an idea of, I assume most people here already have some sort of website that is not just an empty PHP file. And with that, the goal here is to show that it doesn't take that much to start adding a microweb endpoint to it. Especially if you already have a way to actually like list posts out, either because they're in a database somewhere or because they're files that get rendered by Jekyll, or however you are storing stuff internally. But the idea is to, just do as little as you can each time to incremental improvements, build a small thing, make that work. So I skipped over all the authentication part because it turns out that can just be handled externally with services. I, of course, encourage everyone to also bring that aspect of it home as well. But that is a little more involved, and that is not something that is a half-hour project. It's a little longer. But the next thing you could do is take over the token management. So if you want to issue your own tokens and using some other internal thing that you're doing, then like this code can change. So if I want to instead be like, I'm going to issue tokens for this microweb endpoint, maybe I want to store tokens in Memcache or something, or store them in Redis, or use JOTS or something. If you create the token, then you can verify it your own way. So instead of asking the external service, is this token valid, you can just be like, is this token in my token cache? Right. But of course, that requires more code and more moving parts on your end, and can't be done without libraries usually, right? I need to store it somewhere, so I need some sort of storage wrapper. And then the other part of that is the authorization endpoint. So what we saw with Quill, if I sign out and sign in, so this screen is like a typical OAuth screen that you'd encounter in any time you're logging into OAuth apps. It's, do you want to allow Quill to access this website? It's trying to create and update and use the media endpoint. You could also put this into your own website as well. So my website has this built in, so mine looks slightly different. This is the one that's a service that you can use. But that's sort of like the next step after issuing your own tokens, is also being your own authorization server. There's a couple of open source equivalents of this as well. There's one that's a single file in PHP, so you can just drop it onto a server somewhere, which is pretty cool. But there's ones written in other languages as well. And it's also not that complicated of a spec that you could also just write it from scratch. Cool. Any other questions?
Yeah. When you upload, it goes first to Quill, or directly to, when you upload an image or any media, it goes directly to your server, or it goes through Quill?
It's going through Quill because Quill is the app that I'm using in this case. So
it's safe to just cancel when you are modifying the tag or the URL for the image, because it's not on your server yet.
So the photo part, there's two parts to the photos, right? Mm-hmm. When I do this, my browser is sending it to Quill, and then Quill's sending it to the server.
Okay, now it's in Quill.
But now it's not, Quill doesn't have a copy of it. Quill just pushed it over to the media endpoint. And like, if you look at the source of this, it's being loaded from, that's the JavaScript preview. But Quill doesn't have any copy of it. It's not storing it. It's just, it sent it over to the media endpoint, got back a URL, and it's keeping that URL in this JavaScript, in the JavaScript of this page, so that I can make the post. But if I close this tab, it'll be gone. Like, Quill won't have any record of that photo existing if I close this tab.
Yeah, but at the same time, if you cancel, you still have a copy.
Yeah. So it is on my server. If I look at this files, that file does exist over here on the server. And if I close this, like it just Quill forgot about it. It's still on the server, and it'll be left there unless I do something else. So that's also like it's intentionally done that way so that you have the option to be smart about it. So there's like the media endpoint. There's two ways you can use it. One is you can use it as the actual storage of the image, which is the sort of like easy way, and that's why like we can make this so quick. Is that like this is actually just hot linked from the media endpoint storage. You could also use the media endpoint as just a cache, and Quill sends a photo to the media endpoint. Media endpoint stores it for 5 minutes, and if it's not used in a post, it's deleted, right? And if it is used in a post, your blogging engine could actually like copy it itself somewhere else, or tell the media endpoint to keep that one and don't delete it, things like that. That's all like enhancements you can do, and you don't really have to tell Quill whether or not that's what you're doing because Quill doesn't care. Make sense? If we go and look at the blog post editor, it does the same thing. So this is actually where the media endpoint starts getting more useful. I'm writing a post, and then I'm going to be like, oh, I need a photo in the post. So I'm just going to drag it in. Now I'm going to keep writing. And maybe I add 5 more. Well, I don't want to then have to hit publish and wait for 5 photos to get uploaded. But notice what happened. There's a media endpoint, so Quill already sent this to the media endpoint. So it's already sitting on the server and it's already uploaded. So if I go and, like if I look at the source of this URL, nope, didn't work. Something failed. Well, normally it works. The idea being that it should already be uploaded by the time I'm ready to hit publish. So when I go to hit publish, there's no upload step. The upload's already done, so it's a quick done and published. So that's the reason it's a usability thing as well, which is it can help speed up the experience of you don't have to wait around for uploads because it can happen in the background.
Is this post on the site now?
I think I have a problem with the ordering. No, I don't know what happened to that one. Oh, let's look at what it did on disk. That should be. I used the wrong character for the date. That's what it was. That should have been an I. I think I've been overwriting some of these posts. Okay, which one is it? Nope, that was the first one we did. These are not in the right order. Oh, it's that blank one. So, don't have time to cover it. There are 2 modes for MicroPub. One is the very simple form upload, which is handled with where you can just be like, take the whole input, JSON encode it, just shove it into the file. The other one is where it actually sends you JSON data, and it does that in order to send you more complicated structures. So if we go look at the Quill docs, as soon as you want to send something HTML or like a nested object for like a check-in, then the form encoded simple form post thing doesn't work. So if you go look at the docs for the editor, this is now what it sends. So it's actually sending me JSON, which is not handled in PHP by default. You have to do something special in PHP to handle that, which is why it just ended up as an empty post in our storage. But then it can say this content is HTML, and same idea, but it's like a different transport. So you have to handle those 2 formats if you want to build support rich content. Well, cool. I think that takes us to the end. Hopefully that was useful.
Yes. Thanks. I'm
Cool.
Don't know how successful I'll be.
I'm sure you can get something up.
Yeah.
The nice thing is, again, being able to offload a lot of that work to other services so that you can just start in on the part that you care about and not have to worry about all the tokens and authentication.
I was trying to live code it on Glitch
Oh,
in Node to try to follow along. I found an NPM module for Express, a micropub,
oh,
and I got it mostly working.
oh, nice. Okay.
Just with in-memory data store.
Yeah, yeah. Sweet.
But just like, can I get the round trip going using all these external services?
That's awesome.
Only 30 seconds after you finish the session.
Nice. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everyone for coming.